Hey everybody, welcome back. We have a special guest today. You know me, Kaylee McMahon, but today we have Hallie Brown. I'm going to let her introduce herself, and she's going to talk about her level of expertise, and we're going to talk a little bit about things that are going to teach me some lessons. So I'm hoping as I'm learning, you're learning. Hallie Brown, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Kaylee. I'm Hallie Brown with Rose Rock. We're a private lending firm, also a developer. We specialize in all types of asset classes with a focus in Texas, but are willing to go nationally for our experienced investors.
Very cool. So that was so intriguing to me because let's dive into that a little bit. As far as is hard money and private money different?
Good question. So they're not mutually exclusive. So private money can refer to anyone who has any sort of pool of funds that is from a private investor, meaning maybe not a bank, maybe it's your own money, maybe it's your grandmother's money, maybe a whole pool of investors' money. And then hard money lending is referring to the actual structure of the loan and the type of lending that you do. So those often used interchangeably, but they refer to different parts of the lending process. So hopefully that provided some clarity.
Well, can you tell me a little bit, so from a perspective of the investor who is lending to other people, what are some of the pros well, actually, let's go with the bad stuff first. What are some of the cons or some of the warnings that I'm sure you can build in all kinds of insurance, safeguards, things like that, but what are some of the cons of lending to other people?
Yeah, so are you asking from the perspective of a lender or from the perspective of a borrower?
As the investor, from the lender.
From the lender? Yeah, there's a lot of gray areas. Private lending is technically, it's a consumer loan. Or I'm sorry, it's a business loan. So it's a business loan to an investor for commercial purposes. And so in that response, it's less regulated. So, which is good and bad because it provides more flexibility. However, the bad part of it is sometimes people don't know what you don't know. So a good counsel, a good attorney is I can't state how valuable that is to someone, and it's worth every single dollar you'll spend. So that's one of the things that I always recommend to people who are interested in getting the lending. Even if you're going to lend to your best friend, you don't need it until you need it. So that counsel is invaluable for people. So that's what I would say is the part of the higher level, good and the bad, just to start.
What would you say as far as counsel goes? What type of counsel do you need support from?
All of the above. Um, I would just get you a really trustworthy real estate attorney, someone who's had a lot of experience in the field. They know the ins and outs. They know that the loopholes that could happen down the road because they've seen it happen in the past. Those are the people that you want on your team.
Now, for example, during this time of COVID stuff, I've been dealing a lot with getting qualified, requalified for loans on apartment buildings. And apartment buildings are some of the safest things to invest in, period. And it's kind of crazy to me, some of the things that they're trying to do as far as making our conservative underwriting just kind of like, not just conservative, but things that make zero sense. Like the building has never performed that bad the last 30 years that it's been in existence, even through '08. And things that are just making it to where we can't get we're not doing over leverage. But long story short, I guess my question is, even though we're lending on safe assets, there are so many protections that the bank is putting in place to protect them, because obviously banks are not in the business of owning real estate. They may have to do that at some point, but they'd rather not, from my understanding. Where do you get industry standards and information to know if you're lending on a certain type of asset in real estate or a certain thing, how to protect yourself? Or is that something that the attorney would have? How do you do that?
Yeah, so hard money lending and private lending very different from banks, because as a lender's job, you're supposed to protect against the worst case scenario. And the problem with COVID is that no one knows the worst case scenario. So an asset that has historically been really safe is no longer considered safe, and it's no longer the obvious choice for a lot of banks and a lot of lenders, and that's why they've pulled out. I think it's also created some uncertainty around multifamily specifically because close quarters, a lot of common areas. Banks just really didn't know how people would respond. So I think you have to kind of flip it on its head, because they're not exactly lending on the asset. They're lending on the amount of risk they think they can curtail with that asset, which is hard to know. And so that can be difficult. As far as being a lender ourselves, the best thing that I can say to anyone is just talk to anyone and everyone that you know. Talk to bankers, appraisers, insurance providers. No amount of article is reading is going to replace that hands-on experience that you can get by actually talking to people. So just asking people what they're learning, hearing from them, listening more than you talk is really important.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so when it comes to like right now,
Mhm.
are you continuing to lend on the things that you normally would, or are you changing your strategy? And if you're changing, do you kind of have like a board of advisors or people that you go to that, like I've got some people who have been in the commercial industry that are on my unofficial board, for 40 years, and I call them when I don't know. How are you handling this right now?
Yeah, good question. Our firm is a little unique because we have a development arm, we have an acquisition arm, and then we also have a private lending arm. So within our firm, we have a lot of different expertise, and so we really lean on each other. So we have an internal loan committee, and then we also have a lot of different banks that we will lean on and that we know really well, just because we've been in the game for over 20 years now, and so we have those relationships. So that's who we call. And then we try and always help people out and hope that when we need help, they be there in return, whether it's, the maintenance person at our property in East Texas, or it's our lead banker at our largest facility. So it just depends on what we're looking for.
Wow. Okay. So now how about as far as safeguards to protect yourself right now? So what would be some advice if someone were to be an individual that was hard money or private money lending, that you're seeing that you think are really, I hate to use the word safe, but just really good ideas?
Yeah, talking to whoever is going to take you out of the loan, talk to those people, because you know what it will take to actually have someone be taken out of your loan. If not, you're kind of the blind leading the blind. So I would say talk to the people who are supposed to be your takeout option, and they'll give you an idea of what criteria they're looking for, what their underwriting standards are, if they've lowered their LTVs, why, how long, what's the new interest reserve requirements, all of that stuff. So you can analyze a deal up front, knowing this will have to be the takeout criteria, and if it's not feasible, then don't do it, no matter how shiny the deal looks. It's kind of our underwriting standards.
Now, for those of us that don't know what, I guess, a takeout lender means or when that would come into play, can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. The takeout lender is pretty common sense. It's just whoever's going to take us out. So for most of us, we do a lot of multifamily. We also do other types of commercial properties, such as interim construction loans and looking at self-storage, items like that. And so a lot of our loans are refinanced. They're not flip and sale products. And so because of that, we're talking with the lenders who will provide that refinance loan at the end of our short-term term.
Is that the same thing as a bridge loan, or is it different?
It could be. Oh, another one of those not mutually exclusive things.
Right.
People will sometimes use hard money or bridge interchangeably. A bridge lender could be a 5 to 7 year term. Typically, hard money is 12 to 24 months, depending on who you're talking to.
Mhm.
Bridge lenders could be 3, 5, 7 years. So it could be that takeout option, but it could be a longer term traditional product as well. It just depends on the asset.
So I'm guessing that if you're lending on something, you're going to want to see, okay, um, exit projections when you're looking at someone who's proposing what you're going to be doing. Like you mentioned, knowing who that takeout lender is. What if somebody comes to the table that is like, okay, so I'm going to be taking this vacant asset and we're going to be doing this for 12 months. And then after this, then we're going to start getting our income up to this place. And then we'll look at our second lending option to either bridge into another longer term debt structure or to refinance out or whatnot. What do you do if somebody doesn't have that second piece to the puzzle because maybe they don't have that connection yet? Do you guys offer that?
Sure, yeah, we do offer that. We also encourage people to start looking around, even if they don't. And you don't have to get anything concrete in writing and sign anything yet. But as long as you have those upfront conversations, and we do offer connecting people, and we're happy to make industry connections, whether it's a bank or non-QM lender, things like that. So we do provide that option, but we highly encourage people to reach out on their own as well, so that way they're not just taking our word, but also explore for yourself and figure out what's the best solution for you.
What is a non-QM lender or QM lender? What does that mean?
Yeah, so non-QM, non-qualifying mortgage, meaning it just doesn't fit in the nice little pretty box. So anything that is not a traditional loan that a bank will take is a non-QM loan.
Mhm.
And I feel like there's more things that don't qualify than do. So I think that's the easiest way to explain it. But let me know if you want more information.
Well, where does non-prime or subprime fit into any of that?
So, and you're talking about rates?
Not necessarily just the topic and the word, because I don't know, for those of us who've watched like The Big Short, or those of us who've watched movies like that, and that's, I don't know what's real, what's not real, but when it comes to if you're a lender and you're lending on a product, obviously there's things where, like you mentioned, you can package it together and then it's rated a certain way. Because I was looking at tranches and different other things that I don't want to totally get into on this session, but the fact that some grouping is made up of all different levels of quality of a product and mortgage product. If you're, just me, just an individual person, and you're lending on something, I guess what is, I don't know if not subprime exists anymore. If it's non-prime, what does that mean? How does that affect your lending? I just don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so we're kind of venturing off into another world too. So that doesn't really affect us because we don't package up our products and sell them on the secondary market, and we don't really sell them off as because what you're doing then is you're creating a financial product,
Yeah.
which is a whole different ball game. So that's what The Big Short is they're taking all of these small
CDO, CMO. Yeah.
yeah, and creating a new financial product and calling it something else, which is not really what we do. So it doesn't really impact our line of business. But there are lenders who will do that and they'll sell them off. There's specifically larger groups that sometimes you'll see some smaller local hard money lenders and local private lenders will sell their loans to a bigger corporation. Most times they're in California or New York. So that's usually a heads up. And then they'll take it and package them up and sell them on secondary market. But most local lenders don't even touch that. And so it really doesn't concern our line of business or our day-to-day operations.
Okay, very cool. Have you ever, what is the weirdest thing that you've done a hard money or private money loan on?
I've said no to a lot because I usually try and use common sense underwriting. And so I've had someone brought me something in West Texas and there's some like alpaca on the property. And I'm like, I know I look like I could value an alpaca farm. Surprisingly, I don't know how to underwrite that. So I'm going to have to pass. So you just get some really weird situations, and you can tell pretty quickly if an asset is going to work or not, or if we're trying to shoot off the hip at it.
Right, right. Now, in regards to trying to figure out kind of what your buy box criteria is or what your lending criteria is,
Mhm.
where do you get that experience from? And also, when you're learning how to underwrite, where would somebody who wants to become a hard money lender, say with like their IRA, or maybe they get an inheritance or something like that, how would they even learn, or who would they lean on to learn the underwriting part of looking at somebody else's prospective deal?
That is a good question. I would not recommend my personal path to anyone else. My journey was a lot of trial by fire. And so over the years, I helped a gentleman start a hard money lending business and just learn the hard way, which is not the recommendation. So if you're an individual looking to lend out your IRA or something like that, I would just honestly be very careful and have an attorney, and then only lend to like very qualified, verifiably successful people, just because it's hard to know who to vet, and underwriting is so on a case by case basis depending on the market and the asset and who the borrower is.
Mhm.
Because even people who you know and trust, if they get in a tough situation, sometimes they just disappear for 2 months. And I've had a borrower who got deported by ICE to Mexico and just disappeared for 4 months, and no one heard from him. And it was like, he was the most reliable guy. He showed up early, he stayed late, he got all of his projects done, he was the best borrower. And it just, he got deported and we didn't know. And from the paperwork we had, he was all verifiable and legal. And it was just an unfortunate situation. And so there's stuff you just can't really plan for. And so I think you may have mentioned this at one point, but if you have a pool in your 401, if you're in your IRA,
Mhm.
don't ever overinvest in one part. Like only invest a very small percentage in one thing, because if it goes wrong, it can really, unfortunately, it can really go wrong. And so I think that's a really wise piece of advice for people, is to keep your portfolio diversified and limited as far as what you have invested in different assets.
What would you recommend to be like a decent percentage? Like when I take on some kind of investment from somebody for the first time, I don't accept more than 10% of their net worth. But if you're talking about like their IRA, would that apply to their full IRA fund account? How would you do that?
Yeah, and I think you have to look at what their retirement plan is as a whole. Some people, if you want to put money under your mattress, then that's fine too. It just depends on what your whole retirement plan is. And if you have a safe cushion and you're comfortable with that risk, that's a personal decision that no one else can make for you. And so no underwriting criteria and underwriting matrix is going to make a difference. If you're pretty risk averse, then maybe, you need to reconsider your investment strategy. But honestly, I think that if I personally was going to invest in something like this, I probably wouldn't do more than 15% of my own money, but that's not prescriptive for anyone else. That's just my own personal opinion.
Hey, we're like I said 10, you said 15. I mean, everyone's
Yeah.
got their own idea of what works. It's just, I guess, your risk tolerance. And,
Mhm.
if that's your retirement account, be careful with that, obviously, because you probably built that up your whole life.
Yeah.
Now, is there any kind of insurance? So as a lender, is there any kind of, like how we have home insurance, auto insurance, et cetera, is there insurance against a bad borrower? Or like, for example, when we're doing loans that come from the government, they have non-recourse options, but there's always what we call bad boy carve out. So for example, if somebody becomes a felon, if somebody commits fraud intentionally, if these things are found out by a court, then I don't even know if those lenders have more insurance than just taking back the physical asset. Is that your only thing, or is there more?
Yeah, good question. It depends on your loan documents. Really, for a lender, your loan documents are your insurance. And so that's why it is important to have that attorney. And as a lender, if you're giving someone else money that in a significant amount, you should know every word of your loan documents, forwards and backwards, probably better than the attorney at that point. So really, our loan documents are insurance, and we live and die by those. And so that's kind of how that works for us. I'm not aware of any. That's not to say there isn't more, but I'm just not aware of any, and I don't. Our firm doesn't use any.
Okay, well, that's actually some really good advice. Now, do you guys lend in more states than Texas, or where all do you lend?
Yeah, so we lend in investor-friendly states. We have had a focus in Texas because our firm started in 2019. And then in the past 2 years, we've done about almost 40 million in volume. And so we're looking to expand outside of Texas as well, going into 2021. But really those investor friendly states, meaning they're non-judicial foreclosure states. And I'm sure you're going to ask me to define that. So it just means,
Oh yeah.
I know I'm catching the pattern.
Well,
Um,
I'm learning.
yeah. Well, I'm glad it's helpful. But yeah, non-judicial foreclosure states, meaning you don't have to go to court to foreclose. We file something with the county clerk. We can do it electronically. Everything can be done with a notary, remote, electronic filing, all that stuff. We just don't want to have to actually send someone to court.
Yeah, it's pretty, especially right now with everything being shut down.
Yes. Yeah. Very important in those situations for sure, which is why you've heard in the news different states or different lenders in different states can be in a sticky situation right now because they aren't able to foreclose in different situations. And even if it is a case where they really should have foreclosed and it's not that they were just being extra harsh on the borrower, unfortunately, the system doesn't treat them any differently. So it kind of depends on that information.
Wow. Yeah. Have you had any situations where you lent in a state that wasn't investor friendly first, and could you detail that experience if you did?
No, I actually have not. So my other firm was only in Texas. This firm, we've mostly in Texas. We've looked at a few other states and we've originated some in Tennessee, which we're really excited about. But I haven't done any in any judicial foreclosure states. But I'm honestly very thankful. And the most important thing about being a lender is just to say no more than you say yes, really. Because there's a lot of situations and it just doesn't work, and it's not personal, and it would have been great 6 months down the road, but it just didn't work out. And that's probably the most important thing that I've learned is it's okay to say no. You don't have to be everything for everyone, and that's not healthy in the long run anyways.
No, I agree. That's why I kind of was going down that road of asking about like how do you define your criteria? Because it's the same thing with us and our deals. I have to go through 1 to 200 deals, underwriting them before we'll find something and then win at a price that makes sense too. It's kind of nuts. So is there a school you can go to? Is there how do you?
The School of Hard Knocks. I don't know. I wish. I can probably build a better financial analysis model than I can decorate my own house. And I'm sitting in my guest room. If you can't tell, it's not very well decorated. So it tells you where my skills are. So I've just built out a lot of financial models and figured out this is what works, this is what doesn't. Pay attention to the data. If you don't have that available, I'm sure there are places where you could probably buy reports. I don't know of any off the top of my head, but that would probably be a valuable piece of information, is to buy reports from people, and it'll be worth it.
Now, if somebody wanted to, for example, learn how to be a hard money lender, do they need to go work for a big lender house, or is it just you find someone like me in multifamily? I found somebody doing a lot of it, and they've been doing it for years, and so I kind of figured out a way to add value to their life and just kind of paid attention to what they were doing. And eventually we had enough rapport where when I was doing it myself and I had a specific situational question, I could respectfully, reach out once a week or something and say, hey, here's a list of questions. Would that be the best way to get into lending or learning about it?
Yes. So you froze for a little bit, but I think I got it. So it really depends on what your goals are and what your skill set is. Some people like myself, when I started, I was young and scrappy, and I was willing to put in the time and the energy. And so I just kind of learned off the cuff, on the fly, on and off all the things. And so people who have that time and availability, then that is an option. If people who don't want to spend that much time because they have another full-time job, that's probably just not going to be the best route for you. There is an organization that I would recommend, and it's called the American Association of Private Lenders. They have a lot of great resources. And I'm not sure, I'm a member, and so I don't know if you have to pay to be a part of that group, but they have great resources, and they do a lot of legislative work on behalf of private lenders. It's how I first got introduced to that organization. And so if you're interested, they have a lot of good resources to at least start with. But that's probably my recommendation.
So it's the AAPL?
AAPL, yeah. American Association of Private Lenders.
I'm trying to put together an acronym in my head. Okay, cool. That's a good, hopefully there's some resources online if you Google that or whatnot. So that's a great starting point. Thank you so much, Hallie. Now, I guess the last biggest thing that I have to ask now, what are the pros or the upside of being a private lender or a hard money lender?
Yeah, it's more fun. If you can go work for a bank and be a commercial loan officer at a bank, then that's great if that's what you want to do. I personally just wanted more flexibility. I wanted something a little more fun, a little more challenging, which I definitely got. And so that's why I got into private money lending. I also get to meet a lot more really interesting individuals like yourself who have really big goals and big dreams and need a creative avenue to get there sometimes. And so that's the fun part of the job. And there's different business models for using hard money lending and when it's appropriate, and there are times when it's not. But the fun times is when it lines up with those people who just need something creative out of the box to do their next job, or maybe they have a lot of other projects going on and they want to do their own and really get their own investing group off the ground. Stuff like that is always really fun to talk to people about and figure out how we can help them realize those dreams.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so do you find that kind of, everyone in their career, right, has like kind of a starting point, like myself, we have 780 doors under management now, and it's taken me about 2 years to get to that point, and we're still growing. But do you find that as you build those relationships, because like even right now I had to flip my loan from multifamily Freddie Mac to a bank loan,
Yeah.
and a short-term bank loan to then refi just so we could get it closed before the end of the year, and make sure that we could do our cost segregation study and all this other stuff that we had planned. And that wasn't in my initial plan, but it was pretty tough to get it done. I'm not going to lie. We had to offer extra things to the bank, like let's do a reserve account that we don't touch for 12 months. Let's, in addition to that, let's keep all of our accounts at the same bank. Let's, in addition, you want to kind of give the bank some advantages of working with them, not just on the loan, but some other things too. We opened 2 money market accounts with them too, etc. But, do you find that, I guess my question is, do you find that whenever you work with somebody in the beginning that maybe starts to get some traction, do you find that you have kind of a lifelong partnership? Is that kind of why it's rewarding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and really, I view our line of business similar to a few others, where it's not supposed to be your long-term solution for everything, but it is something to help you get started. And then it's really helpful on. So we have some borrowers who've used it, and they'll do 4 development projects on their own, and then they need that 5th development project to keep their guys going. But the bank says, nope, we capped you at 4. We step in and provide the 5th. So we like those long-term customers, and we have some people who we believe that we'll have long-term relationships with those guys, and we're really excited about. But our strategy is not to be your only source of financing. We want to help you get off the ground and then qualify for lower interest rate financing, which that is what appropriate and what you should be doing. 5 years down the road, we don't necessarily believe you'll stick with us for your whole life, and that's not our business model either.
Very cool. Now, on the side of your business, are you involved in multiple different types of investing individually, or is this kind of just your one focus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my husband is an entrepreneur, and so that is our baby. That is what we've been investing in for the past almost 4 years. He recently sold the company, so maybe we'll get into something else, but really that's a lot of risk, as I'm sure having to sign on the dotted line everywhere. So we try and limit our personal risk in that respect. So I'm interested about doing it in the future myself. I definitely have seen what to do and what not to do, but historically I haven't actually done it myself.
Well, historically, you haven't done like real estate investing or any
Yeah.
kind ever. Because, for example, if you've got like a
Mhm.
401k or an IRA, or I mean, even like I've done some like $5,000 house notes. I mean, like there's little things, that and some stuff that's not even real estate, like tech, like Bitcoin. Like, I mean, there's all kinds of different things out there. Have you done any of that?
Yeah, and I guess that's a good clarification.
Yeah.
We invested essentially in my husband's business for a really long time, and then we've invested in like the stock market, but we mostly just invest in like the S&P and similar type products because I went to school for finance, and coming out of that, I was like, you know what? These people are going to some of them spend 26 hours a day, it feels like, just analyzing financial products. And I'm like, surprisingly, I don't have that much time on my hands.
Go
I'm
figure.
going to leave that to the professionals. So that's what we've been doing so far. So we've technically invested in a specialty construction and landscape company in Austin for the past 4 years is what we've been doing.
Very cool. And the hard money lending and private lending. That's very cool. So you've, like you said, you've seen kind of what not to do and what what to do.
Yes,
Um,
hopefully. You ask me again in a few years and we'll
right.
see how I answer.
We'll see what happens after all this mess and kind of what plays out. None of us really know, you know. Well, Hallie, thank you so much. We're getting right to the end of our time slot. And I wanted just to ask if anyone that's listening or watching this video wants to get a hold of you and ask questions or figure out how they can partner with you or invest with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I would say the best way to get a hold of us is all of our contact information is on our website at roserock.co. That's the best way you can get our phone number, email address, more information about our products.
And then if you could give one piece of advice as a hard money lender or a lender, what would you say?
Get a good real estate attorney. I
Okay.
think I've said it 5 times.
Reinforced. Okay. It's the
I
same thing in
know.
my industry. I agree. Well, Hallie, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you getting on while we're in different time zones. And I look forward to learning from you again in the future.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, Kaylee.
You got it.